You are listening to the Starter Girls podcast with Jennifer Loading. Whether you are starting a project, starting a business, starting a brand, or starting a movement, we are here to talk about it. And the Starter Girls show is brought to you by Walt Mills, photographer of Glad Models Agency. If you are here in the Dallas or surrounding area and you are looking for some photography work, check out Walt. You can learn more about him and his work at photosbywalt.com. And with that, we are going to go ahead and get things started. Today is a great day to be brave. You might as well start now. You have the power to change your circumstances any day you decide. Let today be that day. Rise up, be amazing, be you, do you. All right, friends, I am super excited to welcome my guest to the show today. But before I bring her on, I'm going to tell you a little bit about her. Catherine Porth wears many hats in her day-to-day life, but she is driven by one purpose. That is to improve and grow opportunities for marginalized women, one aspiring leader at a time. She is the founder of Let Her Speak, where she curates women-empowered events, conducts female-focused research, and develops leadership education. She founded Let Her Speak originally with one purpose, to share the stories of women who often get overlooked and forgotten. She believes that through community, research, and education, more women will rise to leadership positions. Catherine has over 10 years of experience in service, business development, training, and research. She's worked in a broad range of industries, including financial services, workplace design, and technology startups. She now uses that experience to mentor and consult business owners and corporate teams. She holds a bachelor's degree in marketing and entrepreneurship from the University of South Carolina and a master's in business administration from the University of Tennessee. Born and raised in Iowa, she now resides in Knoxville, Tennessee with her husband, dog, and her rabbit. I love it. Hey, welcome to the show, Catherine. I'm super excited to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me.
And I must say, I have a couple rabbits, so I know what that's like being a rabbit owner.
Oh, good. In Tennessee, it seems like there's not very many of us.
Well, I will tell you, you know what's interesting about rabbits? I always feel like they're kind of like, people always think they're kind of like having a guinea pig or a hamster. And I'm like, no, they're like having a dog or a pet. I mean, like a real pet. You know what I mean? And so my kids have had, my oldest daughter brought rabbits home when she was in elementary school, and she's now going to be 24. So this is how long we've had rabbits at our house, like continuously. And then somehow we ended up with more. And then she left and moved out and left me with the rabbit. So now I have one of hers that she left and another one. So
yeah, and also it's hard to not have one once you've had one for a while. It seems I've had a rabbit since I was 5 years old. I've pretty much always had a rabbit.
Yeah. So you kind of know them. They're fun little critters to have. They're fun. They're different, but they're fun.
They are.
So anyways,
yes, they're very.
Yeah. So I'm super excited to have you on the show. And so I want to get things started here. And so what I want to do real quick, I guess, is tell us a little bit about what Let Her Speak is. Tell us a little bit about what this is and kind of how it came about for you.
Yep. So Let Her Speak originally came about when I had just moved to the Knoxville area from Iowa. I was here for a few months trying to meet new people, as you do in a new city where you don't really know anybody. And because of my corporate background, I got used to going to networking events all the time and going to a lot of other get-togethers, trying to meet new people. And no matter what, I always felt kind of empty every time I went. It felt like I never really got to know anybody there. I didn't feel like I got to connect with anybody. And especially with women, there's even research that supports that you need to have, for one thing, a very strong inner circle of women, but also for us to get to know each other, we need to go beyond the professional surface level and really dive in and get to know each other, to trust each other and support and want to recommend each other for positions or work. So I came to the Knoxville Entrepreneur Center since I was a mentor there at the time with this idea for an event that would be a deeper conversation amongst fellow women in business, where we look at a woman's story, one story at a time. So it was local women. They're not women that we fly in from all walks of life and then they fly out the next day. These are women that you would see in the grocery store and could easily sit down and chat with. And she shared a story that she might not ever have had the opportunity to share anywhere else. It's not necessarily something that has to do with like top 5 tips for digital marketing or how to network like a pro. It was this is a story that is an integral part of who I am and why I do what I do, that lets you know a little bit more about why you should get to know me more. So in this first event that I designed, we had 6 women, and then we did roundtable conversations with each other. So every woman who told a story, she would then pose questions to the audience, so that you also got to sit with her story for a little bit and have it resonate a little bit deeper, connect with the other women at the table. Maybe you had no experience whatsoever with the struggle the woman was talking about, and you got to hear from other perspectives, women who have. And then at the end of the event, then we actually had action points, and we had a group discussion about what are things that we need to do to move things forward in our community. Because one of the issues is that we don't have a lot of women leaders in the community, especially in the business world in Knoxville. And out of that, it had such a huge success. I mean, we sold out with nobody ever knowing who we were. They just loved the concept. We had demand for people wanting more things like this. The original event was a half-day event, so we started doing smaller events with the same framework, but one topic and an activity, and a little bit more opportunity to feel like you were giving back as well as doing something for yourself. And through that, I've also been doing my own research. So my background before I started Let Her Speak, and actually while I was building it up, was a tech startup that specializes in implicit behavior research. And it's one of the only companies that does this. And so I started using the methodology I was adapting to in this research role to dig deeper into what was it that women need, what are the barriers that they're facing in the community, how do they define success, what are the goals that they have for themselves. And then I knew what type of programs and opportunities and events I needed to design to meet those needs. So now we are expanding and building more infrastructure into the educational aspect. So continue to have events. And then we've launched our series that's called the She Speaks series, for an opportunity for women to gain visibility and share their stories. And then we are now going to be launching leadership initiatives of cohorts for women to work on their confidence, communication, and financial literacy, but then also engage leaders in the communities to help them work through unconscious bias, gender bias, leadership, empathy, and active listening skills.
This is so awesome. And I'm listening to this and so many points to bring up here. I love all of the different areas that you're tackling, because when you were talking about this just being isolated, in the Knoxville area, I feel like this women leadership thing is like in a lot of places. I really feel like it's in many places. And what's so interesting is that I'm sitting here and a lot of your stuff is resonating with me on a level, because a lot of when I started this podcast was really because of those things that you're talking about. I witnessed when I was working with women in the industry that I was in. It was a lot of that lack of confidence. And how do you teach somebody to build a business when they're wrestling with all of these head games? They have all this other stuff they have to tackle before they can even sit down and understand entrepreneurship. You know what I mean? So I love what you're doing here, but I think something else that you bring in that I think is really neat is that you understand that research background, because I think that is essential in creating the programs that you're doing, because so often we don't really know when you're trying to, I'm in that phase right now where I'm trying to design some different things, and it's just finding out that information. What is important to women? What do you need to focus on? And how do you put that out there to them? So I think what you're doing is really incredible. I like it. And it's powerful. I think there's a lot to it. And the other thing I will say too, is when you were talking about the stories, something I always talk about, stories sell. I think they sell. And, in anything that you do, people want authenticity. They don't want to be canned with a speech or like, this is what I'm selling. They want to know, how can you relate to them? And the story always sells. So I can definitely understand how that event could be powerful for women, and because they can resonate with people in there. And even if it's just one person that gets up there, there's somebody that's going to be able to resonate with that story. So I think that's incredible too. So I love what you're doing. And I just think it's an awesome thing. So I always like to ask this question, because I think it's just kind of a fun question. Was there anything in your childhood feel like led you to this?
Yeah, I would definitely say bullying really led to this. So
This is so
when I
good.
was growing up, I was in dance for a big portion of my adolescence, and dance can be incredibly competitive. And if it's depending on the school that you are at, it can butt you against other girls. So a lot of times, yes, you have to dance together as a team, but if you're doing solo dances, which was a big part of what I was competing in, then you were competing head to head with other women or other girls in your class. And it wasn't always friendly competition. And then I was also in pageants when I was young too. So that also, there was some amazing girls that I met, but there was also ones that were just out to get the crown and that's it. They didn't want to make friends. So I dealt a lot with girl bullies. I actually never had any boy bullies. And that even continued on into my corporate world where it was usually if I was bullied in the workplace or if I had any cattiness that was happening in the workplace, it was always women that were the ones doing it. Most of the support that I got for me advancing in my career were actually from my male managers. I had a few female managers that were incredible women, absolutely amazing women. But there was coworkers that would really pull at the strings that were running the line of bullying. And so instead of being angry about that, because there was a period of time where I was very distrustful of other women until I could really get to know them. I usually put my guard up pretty quickly. I realized that that's not a healthy way to go through life. And I realized that when I was at my last corporate job before I moved to Knoxville, I actually ended up with a really amazing core group of fellow employees that were all women that were so supportive of me that it made me realize how important this is, and that if I went through this of having this distrust, there's a lot of women out there that have probably suffered the exact same thing. And one of the best ways to try to help overcome that is to help understand each other's perspectives and each other's backstories. Everybody has a struggle. Everybody has an issue that they're working through that you don't even know about. And a lot of times we try to hide it instead of trying to openly talk about it and help each other out.
That's so good, Catherine. There was a gal that came into the studio last week, Andrea Crum. You probably know her or connected with her. One of the things we were talking about was this whole thing about finding your tribe, and because we have been both been blessed that we came kind of from the same community where we were around incredible mentors. And so like you said a few minutes ago, talking about that, I understand the value of having great women in your space, because when you don't, it's not a good thing. A lot of times when women are doing this, they don't understand their places. And so that's where I think you get a lot of that undermining and that cattiness that comes in. And so I think that's a common thread. I very much a big thing. And so, and even coming from where I was, that was a lot of what I had dealt with, was trying to deal in that space, and you're trying to operate business and you're wrestling with that a lot. So I think that's great. And thank you for touching upon the bullying thing, because I think that's huge too. And that does affect a lot of people. And it's so interesting to me how, we have these things that happen to us, and they kind of inspire us to go out and do things to make a difference, because we've walked those shoes, we've been in that place, and we recognize that if we're going through it, other people probably have as well. So thank you for sharing that and bringing light to that. I think that's an amazing journey. Okay. So in all of this that you've been doing, who would you say has been some of your greatest influencers? Maybe someone that's inspired you or just kind of given you that nudge to keep pushing.
Ever since I started down this road, the entire community of women entrepreneurs that are here in Knoxville have been embracing everything that I've done and have been 100% supportive. I mean, a couple women in particular, my friend Booth Andrews, who I introduced you to, mm-hmm. She was one of the very first women that I sat down and talked about this idea with. And she 100% said, go for it. This is a great idea. And I'll be a speaker at your first event. And actually at the very first event was the very first time she ever shared her story, that she never felt like there was a place to share it before. And so it was almost like a therapy for her too, to really launch her own business that she had been working on for a while but hadn't really made like the big jump for it. And so ever since then, I mean, she has been a huge part of supporting me. I mean, we talk every single week. She's there for me. Another woman that I met actually last year, Berta Medina. She is like the greatest champion and cheerleader that I never knew I needed. And so she 100% is there to tell me out. She's walked through so many roles and lives that she and Booth are kind of like my fairy godmothers. That anytime I'm working on something, or if I need to be reassured that what I'm doing is mattering and it's good work, that I need to go to those ladies, and they help me out.
Those cheerleaders are just amazing, aren't they?
Yeah.
I love it. I'm like that person. I'm like that person that people call when they have an idea and they're like, should I do it? And I'm like, yes, go for it. Let's go. I'm right behind you. Let's do it. So, and I think it's great because you do have to have those people in your corner. You really do. And even coaches have coaches. It's one of those things where I feel like you always need to have somebody in the back cheerleading for you. You need someone to encourage you, because we always have that little voice in your head that just kind of sits there and gives you all the reasons why you shouldn't be doing something. They'll give you all these reasons. And if you listen to that critic in there, you'll stop doing what you need to do. And so, yes, mentors, 100%. I think you need them. And I'm glad that you have those. I think that they really can, give you sometimes that little nudge when you just need to have that, step over that little barrier to get to the next step. So, all right. So Catherine, when you are going after, and we can talk about this project here, when you're going after something, like really just wanting to tackle something, what does that mindset look like for you? What's that process?
So ever since I guess I was a freshman in college, I've tackled big, audacious goals in a similar way. So when I was 18, I read a book called Bird by Bird, which, if you're not familiar with it, it's about writing a novel and how to tackle this big idea that you have of how to tell this story. And she walks you through in kind of a fun way of looking at it through a 1 inch by 1 inch frame. And you're building this thing bird by bird, day by day. And so now I do the exact same thing. I know I have this big dream, and I have this dream of like this being a nationwide thing where we're in cities all across the country and eventually internationally. But I bring it back down to what is my step one for today? And what is my step one? When I first left my full-time job earlier this year, I made a promise to myself that I would step away from that job when I knew clearly what is my day one going to look like, and what does that step one of that day one need to look like. And then I build from there. So I try not to think about what over the next 5 years, what does every single day need to look like. I just build on it from there, so I don't get lost in the expanse of what this dream looks like. And so far, it's worked. It's worked pretty well. Every single day. Fortunately, I have another friend, Sam Lane with Origami Day, she really helps you hone in on how to incrementally work through these big things too. And so she's another one of those touchstone ladies. She also was a speaker at my very first event. And so her methodology helps me hone back into just taking it one day at a time.
Yeah, I love that you're talking about the one step. I think that's great because, when I'm coaching people, I always talk about that because people they'll have a big idea and they get so overwhelmed with all the process from point A to point B. And I always tell them, what is the one thing you can do today to get you closer to the goal? What's just the one thing? Because if you look at it, you'll stop. You won't keep moving. It just gets too overwhelming. So while you want to see the big picture where you're headed, let's just do the one step right now. It's a little easier to tackle it. You know what I mean? I love that. So you get it done. That's great. It's a great way to look at it. I love that question because everybody kind of tackles things a little bit differently. And I'm all about the mindset. I believe everything that you do is you're going to do it or you're not going to do it. And it's going to be solely wrapped around your mindset. The way you're looking at it and processing it, that's going to determine whether or not you're going to get it done or not. So I love that. So if you were going to define success, Catherine, how would you define that in your words?
That's actually a interesting question. Since the women's summit that I do annually, that we had to postpone until October this year, the topic is from success to significance. And I purposely brought up that topic because when, growing up and going to business school, both in undergrad and for my master's, success is so heavily tied to your title and your income. And neither of those had ever excited me. Even though I was a salesperson, I did business development, sales for most of my corporate career. But I was never driven by the money. I was driven by the relationships I was building, and the money followed because I was really good at building those relationships. And I realized that my success is really more so tied to, and how I define it is by the significance and the legacy that I'm leaving. So for me, I define success personally as, how many women was I able to help them improve and see themselves in a new way. Whether that was because they got to share their stories and somebody paid attention to them, and they weren't forgotten about. They didn't feel like they were a whisper in a crowd. They felt like they had every right to be there as anybody else. So every person that I talk to, I want them to know that they are an important person, even if it's just one-on-one conversation or whether they're a speaker at an event, and that they have a contribution to make, and I'm just there to help be a catalyst along the way.
I love that. I couldn't have said it any better. That was so awesome. I think that's so great. It's all about the relationships. I can totally resonate with all of that. So 100%. And I do think a lot of times we do tie success to our titles and our financial status. But I think, like you, it's really about legacy, having impact and making a difference in other people's lives. So it has far greater reach by far, by far. So absolutely. I love it. Okay, so we're going to switch gears a little bit. We're going to do some fun here really quick. So when you're not doing, your projects and working on your data research and creating your events, what do you love to do for fun?
I cook a lot. I actually, I think my mom always thought that I was going to become a chef and open up my own restaurant, but I don't think I could handle the stress of owning a restaurant. But I cook a lot, and when I can, I try to tend to my garden. So we have a small garden, herb garden, and things like that. So a lot of my passion is in food. But then also my husband and I are both pretty outdoorsy. So considering we live, right next to the mountains, then we go into the mountains when we can, or we go kayaking when we can.
Sounds amazing. I love it. All right. Morning or night person?
Oh, night. I am not a morning person.
Not a morning person? Gotcha. All right. And are you a cat or dog person?
Oh, 100% dog.
100% dog. So you have a dog. We talked about that. You have a dog and a rabbit. Have you ever had a cat?
Yeah. No, I'm actually allergic to cats.
Are you?
Yeah. My mom has 2 cats that, I can't be around very long.
Yeah, you're like, I can't be there if the cat's around. I get it. So, yeah. All right. What would you say? Well, and this could be a good one for you since you love to cook. What would you say is your favorite food?
Ooh, well, it's also tough because I love so many foods.
I was going to say, you're a cooker, so you're definitely going to have quite a bit here, I'm sure.
I would say pretty consistently is pasta.
Pasta. You know what's so funny? Mm-hmm. I am not a big pasta eater, believe it or not. It was so funny. My middle child came home from college this past weekend, and so all my kids are like, I don't know how this happened, but like none of them eat meat. Like they just don't like meat. So when we go to dinner, which we did that night, it's always kind of hard to do because I'm a meat eater. My husband's a meat eater. Kids don't eat meat. It's like, where do we go? So we always get Thai food. It's always Thai food, right? Because we can get something for everybody. Well, that night we get in the car and my middle is like, okay, it has to be Mexican or Thai food. Because if you go to Mexican, you can do beans and rice, right? You go to Thai food, you get Thai. My son decided that night he wanted to do pasta. And I'm like, where did that come from? Like where did that, we never talk pasta at all. So it's funny that you say that because I'm not a big pasta eater, but I will tell you, I do love lasagna. I do like a good lasagna, but other than that, I'm not. But I imagine you make some pretty good dishes. So I'm thinking we need to come to your house to eat.
We actually I made lasagna this week for
Did
dinner
you?
one night.
Oh, yum,
Yeah.
yum. Awesome. All right. And if you were on a deserted island, Catherine, you've got your food and you got your basic things that you need, what would be the one thing you would have to have?
Ooh. Um,
This is hard. I know.
yeah, yeah. I would say a pad of paper and colored pencils.
Hey, that's
Because that way, at
good.
least, if I feel like drawing, I can draw, but if I feel like writing a story, I can still write.
There you go. You got it. All right. That's awesome. You can do a lot of stuff with paper and colored pencils. I'm with you on that. Okay. And if you could be any character or superhero for a day, what would you pick?
That's a tough one. My husband and I were just actually talking about if we could have any superhero power, what would be the one that we would want. Um, I I've always been a fan of well, obviously Wonder Woman is an incredible lady, but I've always liked a couple of the different X-Men's.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I think Storm is really cool, and it just seems like a power leader
Yeah.
lady.
Yeah.
So I would probably want to be like personality wise, I would want to be somebody like her.
Awesome. Good answer. I haven't had that one. That's a good one. Nobody's picked that. I always, get the regular ones, but then I'll always get like some random ones. So, and I love this question because I like to hear what people think or like, what would they get to pick if they could be a character for a day? Like, what would resonate with them? So that's good. All right. So, Catherine, if our listeners wanted to learn a little bit more about you, your Let Her Speak, what you've got going on, where do we send them?
So you can go to letherspeakus.com. And then we're also on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram, all under Let Her Speak. Our Instagram handle is at Let Her Speak US.
Okay, perfect. When this goes out and we get it all ready, we'll make sure that we tag you and get the webpage in there and all of that good stuff. We had it scrolling across the screen on the bottom. I don't know if you caught it, but we'll make sure that everything gets out there and in the right places for you. So,
Okay, perfect.
yeah, thank you for being an incredible guest and sharing with us about what you're doing. I love it. Keep doing the good thing and sharing your message. I love I think it's an awesome deal that you got going there. So, with that, I do want to say to our listeners, of course, if you love our podcast, please be sure you give us a rating both on iTunes and Facebook because we can't do this without you, and hit the subscribe button on YouTube. And with that, I'm going to finish up with a final thought. Attitude is a choice. Happiness is a choice. Optimism is a choice. Kindness is a choice. Giving is a choice. Respect is a choice. Whatever choice you make makes you. Choose wisely. And that's by Roy T. Bennett. All right, you guys take care, be safe, and be kind to one another. We'll see you next time.